r/Nosleep, posted by Reddit user Dark and Creepy. If you ever hear crying coming from the woods, don't follow it. Part 1. If you hear screaming or a baby crying coming from the woods, whatever you do, don't follow it. That's what they first told me when I moved to the rural town about 2 years ago. And I probably retold it a dozen times to people who have visited me since. I'm finally turning to Reddit to tell all of you my experiences, and see if any of you have some similar ones to mine. It's not just crying though, it also involves voices that call you by name, asking you to come to them. As of now, I'm not too scared to hear random crying or voices coming from the mountains, because I've heard them so many times. There are certain sounds from the wilderness that scare me to death, however, because they're usually a signal of something bad to happen, such as this one time where we heard louder than usual chilling cry, mixed with screams randomly throughout the day. And that same night, there were 2 goats on one of the farms that were found mutilated and torn to pieces at the edge of the woods. There were separate occasions of the same sounding cry and similar things having occurred. There are only about 10 families that live in this area, and they are a tight-knit community. So when I first moved in 2 years ago, they tended to not like me, but have grown to accept me. They mainly don't like new people moving into the area, or tourists stopping by, because that usually causes the crying from the woods to grow louder. Or the tourists end up going missing because they didn't listen to us when we told them not to follow the sounds. We rarely get tourists now compared to when we first moved here. And since so many people have gone missing in the past, the government has blocked off the forest with a large fence about a year ago. It's still public land and you can go into it, but they put up the fences to try and dissuade people from doing so. Search and Rescue has also put up warning signs saying dangerous, enter at your own risk. They never specified why, and I'm never going to tell you guys where my town is located, because I know people are going to be stupid enough to try and test this story out. I'm posting these stories on Reddit because I want to see if anyone else out there is experiencing the same thing where they live. Or is it just exclusive to my town? The first week I moved to this area was probably one of the scariest experiences of my life, because I wasn't used to the random crying that came from the woods. When I heard a baby crying out from the woods on the second day, I was loading furniture into my new house. I didn't know what to think. It was the first time I had ever experienced it, and the people in town already told me not to follow it, and to just ignore them. When they first told me, I was in disbelief of this, and probably thought it was just how the winds brushed through the trees or something like that made the sounds. So when I heard the crying of a newborn that sounded so realistic, to even the sounds of it breathing in between whines that could be heard echoing from the woods, I had no idea what I should do. My natural instincts were to go and see what was wrong, and if there was a way I could help, but what if what the people in town were saying was right, and that I should never follow it? I decided that I wasn't going to follow it too far, just hoping that I would be able to see whatever it was that was making the noise. I started walking towards the trees and got close to the tree line. As I did, a hand reached out and grabbed my arm firmly. It was one of the neighbors that was helping me move all of my things in. I'll say his name is Manuel to keep his identity safe. He then told me, "I knew you were going to try that, at one point. "What if there's someone over there that needs our help?" I asked, as I pulled my arm out of his grasp. "Look here. No one in this town knows what makes those sounds. And everyone that finds out dies. Don't go over there. Simple as that," he replied, as he tapped me on the shoulder and continued to carry boxes into my house. I tried to ask him more questions about it, but he was always hesitant to talk about it and avoid the conversation as best he could. He finally got annoyed by my constant pestering, that he responded saying, "I've told you everything you need to know about those sounds. Whatever or wherever they come from can hear what we are saying. And supposedly, if you think or talk about it too much, you'll be driven mad, as that allows it to access your thoughts." I stopped asking him questions after that, and now we get along great together. The main thing I got from what he said was that as long as you follow the main rule of not following them, you'll be fine. There are rare occasions, however, like with the goats that have died, where the things come out of the forest. Very few, while I've lived there, have gone missing, but I've heard many stories from the townspeople of hikers who never come back, and even people from search and rescue that have gone missing. It makes sense why the Forest Service put up a sign saying "dangerous, enter at your own risk" on the fence. Because how are you supposed to try and find someone out there with the random crying and even voices calling us by name from the woods? I have a particular story that comes the closest to describing whatever it is out there. And it came from someone from search and rescue that made it out. It's the closest thing we have to a description of what it looks like, but I'll save that for another time. Due to that, I don't want to have my thoughts be thinking about that thing for an extended period of time, and you know why. I'll finish this by requesting that if you ever do hear people calling your name from the woods, or a baby crying, even if the sound sounds like family, don't follow them. Always be aware of people you're around, because the thing in the woods making sounds is often known to imitate the same voices of loved ones. I will just say again one more time to ingrain it into your skull. Just ignore them and act as if nothing is wrong. Since the last time I uploaded the first part of my story, I've gotten a few comments and replies of people telling me what the noises could be caused by. And the top two were SCP-939, its nickname being "with many voices." And for those who do not know what an SCP is, it's supposed to be a thing that needs to be secured and then contained, and lastly protected. Thus the name SCP, because they are highly dangerous. The other one was that skinwalkers are also able to imitate human voices and trick people by luring them with a loved one's voice. However, it is said that only extremely skilled skinwalkers are able to do this. That means it's very rare to come across this trait in them. And so, most encounters just describe seeing them, but never actually hearing loved ones' voices coming from it. I'd like to thank you all for your concern and interest in what I have to say, but I must warn you ahead of time. Do not think about this thing for an extended period of time, or else it will drive you mad. To actually write this all out for you, I have to take about 30-minute breaks for every 20 minutes I'm able to write. If I try to push past those 20 minutes, then random images flash through my head of myself dying in gruesome ways. So, I beg of you that when you finish reading this, please go listen to music or watch your favorite TV show, but whatever you do, do not keep thinking about it. After writing part 1 of this, I found random scratches on the back of my house and have heard eerie knocking on my window during the night. I never go investigate, but just rather sleep through them. However, it is worth the risk that's coming to get me because the local government has tried to cover it up. But I think everyone should be warned not to follow those sounds. Anyway, I'm going to tell you of a story that I first heard when I came to town from one of the families here, who I'll call the Jeffreys. So, one evening, they were having a barbecue in their backyard, and there were about 6 of them all together. They had 2 children, with the younger one being only a year old, while the other one was around 5. It was later in the evening when the 5-year-old went looking for cool-shaped rocks, as in the words of the boy. So while he's doing this, the 5-year-old's mother is keeping an eye on him. But the year-old baby begins to cry, who was being held by her father-in-law. So she quickly rushes over to help her baby, and forgets about the boy, who is now ever so slowly wandering away. That's when they hear voices whisper from the woods, calling out to the boy, saying something similar to this in a child's voice. "Johnny, come play with me. I have plenty of cool rocks for you over here." The boy's father jumped up as he heard the faint whisper, and immediately screams for his son to come back. The thing then copies the father's voice, yelling the exact same phrase. "Johnny, come back. Don't follow the voice." At this point, everyone was freaking out, looking for the boy, but staying relatively close together, so no one would end up missing. They heard crying, but no one knew what to do, because they knew the rule of never following it. But the child was now lost and had no other choice. So the father of the boy runs inside and comes back out with a 12-gauge shotgun. So they follow the cries behind them as they edge closer to the woods, calling for the boy. As they get closer, they come upon a tree where it seems the crying is coming from. The father takes the lead and jumps on the other side of it to find his son huddled up, grabbing the tree for dear life. Johnny opened his trembling mouth, muttering, "Dad, there's something over there calling me. I can still see it." The father swiftly turned his head where his son was looking, but saw nothing out of place. "Here, son, let's take you back to the house. You'll be safe there," his father said, as he handed the shotgun to his own father and picked up his son. "Dad, it's following us," Johnny said, as he squeezed his father's arm tightly. "Don't look at it. Just tell me about your favorite food," the father replied in a worried but loving manner. "It looks like Mommy," Johnny stated quietly, and this sent shivers down the father's spine. And everyone heard what he was saying, but every time they looked back to see it, nothing was there. They all went inside after that and haven't had a barbecue outside since. They were also the few to actually raise children here, due to how dangerous it is to have them wandering about. Their children, even though they were born out here, in the country, have been stuck in their house for nearly their entire lives. It's sad, but I understand why they must take that precaution, because kids are so innocent and trusting. So when a voice that sounds like their mother's or a friend is calling for them, they will most likely listen to it and try to follow it. Nearly the same thing happened to my sister, who has had one child when she came to visit us. She didn't believe me at first when I told her about the voices and the crying that resonates in the woods. That also meant that she was letting her 7-year-old run around everywhere without watching him. She wasn't used to having to constantly keep an eye out for him, and so he nearly ran off after the voice of another little boy who kept calling him to play with him. Her son came indoors and asked permission, and, in his own words, said, "Can I play with the boy that lives in the woods?" As soon as my sister heard this, her eyes grew wide as she realized what I was saying was right. She left that same night. I never invite my family to come to my house anymore because when I do, that thing will mimic their voices afterwards. It only can mimic the voices of people it has heard, so after my sister left my house, it kept beckoning me in her voice to come and help her find her way out of the woods. And like always, I ignore it. But this might backfire in the future if my sister ever did need my help, because I would instinctively ignore it. Now that is all I can write for about now, but if anyone is able to exactly explain to me what this thing is, then I will gladly accept it. That's why I'm telling you as many traits as I can, but I must stop writing now because the images of me dying are once again popping into my head. Till we meet again, stay safe out there.